this isn't going away, folks. So your best line of defense is a dialogue and awareness with children, whether it's your own kids, your nieces, nephews, your grandchildren. You have to start with an age-appropriate conversation. And that's your best line of defense and awareness. Because imagine when we started doing this, we merely had decoys in chat rooms on AOL and Yahoo. That was it. Today, the number of social media platforms has exploded. I can't even keep up with them. I doubt David can keep up with them. Every day there's something new. And they're not the dark web. They are accessible 24 hours a day.
Yeah, you know, and that's why we do what we do, because we don't know who these offenders are and what they're capable of until they arrive at our front door. You know, we all got into this to go after the very worst of the worst offender. And some of our arrestees, you know, have been registered sex offenders, have been down this road before, are attempting to abuse real children. And that's sort of the burden that weighs on us, that, you know, if we're not online, we know that not only these offenders are online, but also millions and millions of kids every day, some as young as 6 or 7 years old. We see cyber tips every day with children who are posting stuff online, who are sharing personal information, who are using these social media platforms way too young, in my opinion. And that's why it's so important that you take some steps to educate yourself. If you have children or grandchildren, if you have a child in your life that is using this technology, it is extremely important to educate yourself, because I can guarantee that most of you with children or grandchildren, they know more than you do about the technology. I wish I could see the room better, but I mean, anybody here still have a flip phone that wants to admit it? Right? Those are the same parents and grandparents who are giving their children that, brand new iPhone or the new, Galaxy S21 and have no idea how to use it, right? Because it's not a matter of, if something's going to happen, but when, right? And it may be no fault of your child or your grandchild's, own, but they're going to use this technology. They're going to have access to things that they've never seen before or have no idea about, right? My son came home one day and, he doesn't want to ask us something. So what's he do, right? He Googles it. So now that search history appears on my computer, right? And my wife finds it and we have a conversation. So, but you're right, when we were kids, right, we wouldn't want to talk to our parents about some of those things, and it's just easier to find that information on the internet. So, please set some rules, right? I got these 5 little bullet points here that are so important, okay? And the number one rule, set some rules. And I say that because I had a parent, and this is going back probably 16 years, right when we started out working these cases. We got out into the community a lot. We did a lot of internet safety. And I had a parent stand up, and she asked this question. She says, I have a problem. She says, I put the computer in my daughter's bedroom, and I don't know how to take it out of there. And before I could answer, this woman next to her stood up, and she's like, you just go in and you pull the plug, and you take it out. We want to be our children's friends, right? But we can't do that when we give them this technology without at least educating ourselves and them about the dangers that are out there. I would love if tomorrow they said we're shutting down the internet. I would have no problem going out and finding another job. Do we think that's going to happen? Absolutely not. Is the internet a lot of good? Yes, it is. But it comes with big risks. And that's why it's so important to sort of set some of these expectations ahead of time. You don't let your child drive a car without giving them training and them getting a license. So why is it okay for us to give that child a piece of technology that connects them to the entire world with unfettered access? Right? So please, embrace the technology as well. If you have children or grandchildren and they're on social media, you better be on social media. Right? Parents that say, I'm not getting on Instagram. I'm not getting on TikTok. You want to stay on Facebook, right? Everyone's got Facebook here, right? You know what the kids say about Facebook? It's for old people. Everyone's deleting Facebook now and they're TikToking and Snapchatting now, right? But understand that when you got on Facebook, kids went away. They don't want to share what they're doing with mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, the aunts and uncles. They want to interact with people they don't know. Okay? So watch what they're doing. Right? Kids see this as a playground. They may use it for school sometimes, right? But they are out there to have fun. Watch the TikTok videos. Watch the Snapchat feeds. Watch the Instagram stories. Right? And they're connecting with complete strangers. Right? Because these social media companies want you to believe that the more friends or followers or subscribers you have, the better your experience is going to be. And so we as adults, most of the time, right, we say, okay, I don't know that person. I'm not going to friend them. They don't have a photo. A lot of red flags go up. But when you're a child, you want to have as many friends as you can. I've talked to middle school classes where girls will raise their hand proudly and say they have 5,000 friends. Now, our follow-up question is always, how many of them do you know in real life? And then the hand starts to kind of come down and they start to get a little, like, sink in their seat a little bit. Because admittedly, they'll say they may know 100 of them. And most of them are celebrities or famous people, sports figures. But how many ways are there to figure out whether someone is really who they say they are online? 0. Because as these undercover efforts will show you, I'm not going online as 46-year-old Dave Frattare. It takes me all of 30 seconds to go out and create an undercover profile or a fictitious profile of a minor child. And the offenders are doing the same thing. They're not going online and saying, I'm that 45-year-old registered sex offender from a Cleveland suburb. They're taking a photo from the internet. They're creating a profile, and they're going out into this victim-rich environment and finding the victims that they're interested in. Because they know how easy it is to be somebody else. They know how easy it is to, groom that child in the virtual world as opposed to the real world. And when we talk about friends versus friends, right, we obviously can appreciate that our friends in real life are a lot different than our friends online. And that's a conversation that we really need to have with our children and our grandchildren, because they don't get that message. This is someone I met online. What's the big deal? My son, I remember the days when we used to play video games, and it was just simply you sat in the same room with your friend and you played a 2-player game. And those days are long gone, because now, my son the other day or a few years ago was saying, hey, I'm going to have some friends over. And what he really meant was they're all going to bring their own TVs and video game systems and sit in separate rooms and connect via the internet and play a game together. But he's got friends where, they're in other states, other countries, people he doesn't know. And I just made that mistake myself by using the term friends with them. But in reality, they're strangers. And when kids start to realize that, they start to see how dangerous these platforms can be. Because the reality of that graph that I showed you earlier, and this huge increase that we've seen, is that almost every platform we deal with allows you to communicate with somebody. Words with friends. Simple game, right? That allows you to chat with that other player. And kids don't necessarily realize that behind those cute little avatars hides a monster, someone who is seeking to offend on them or exploit them. And that's why it's so important that you pay attention to the red flags that exist out there. Okay? Talk to your children. Pay attention to your children, right? You know your children better than anybody. And when they start to spend a lot of time in their room, when they start to turn their devices off when you walk into the room, or, God forbid, the big red flags, right? You start getting packages at your house from unknown people. When I started out doing this back in the days before phones with cameras, we had a fictitious address that we would use. And I would tell guys online, I can't send you a picture because I don't have a camera, or I don't have a phone with a working camera. And so guys would send me digital cameras in the mail, right? They'd send me money to buy cameras. So I think we can agree that that's a pretty big red flag, as well as the fact that if someone shows up at your front door and says, I'm Sally's internet friend, you've probably got a bigger problem on your hands, right? So talk to your children. have that conversation. I'm not going to tell you, and I don't think Chris would ever tell you, to go home and say to your children, get rid of the devices. Don't use the technology. But number one, understand there's a risk, and number two, have those healthy conversations so that they can understand some of the dangers that exist out there. And I wouldn't be doing my job as a task force commander if we didn't talk a little bit about this problem that we're dealing with now. And I hope you can all appreciate, as true crime junkies, if you will, that we as law enforcement need a lot of help. But where we don't need any help is in this online vigilante community that we're dealing with right now. We have seen a huge increase in the number of well-meaning individuals who want to go out and pose as minor children online. Now, in the state of Ohio, there's two ways that an offender commits the crime of talking to a minor child sexually and then potentially getting arrested for it. The first way is that they talk to an actual child who is under the age of 16 years old. The second way, under our crime statute, is that they talk to a law enforcement officer who is posing as a minor child. So we have individuals throughout the state of Ohio and throughout the country who have decided that, especially during the pandemic, they're stuck at home, they got nothing else to do, maybe the hobbies they used to do, they can't do anymore. And so they've turned to the internet to pose as minor children. And in almost every case, that ends badly. Because while I understand that it's, well-intended, a private citizen in the state of Ohio, as well as in many other states, talking to a minor child is not a crime. So when you decide, and this is what happens, right? They meet this individual at a Target, they film it, they put it on YouTube, it gets a few seconds of fame for that group. But what happens to that individual? They go on their way. They've now decided, okay, I didn't get arrested. Maybe I got outed a little bit, and I'll lay low till the internet dies down. But they're left to then reestablish their MO, right? They know they've got to be more careful. They know they have to fly under the radar now. And now it's harder for us as law enforcement to investigate. Because the one saving grace we have is that we can put these individuals on a sex offender registry once they get arrested. Sure, their sentence, and I know Chris touched on this yesterday, sure, their sentence may not be what we want to see. It certainly depends on the county you're in, the state, a number of different circumstances. But the one thing we have going for us is that all of our individuals that are arrested serve time on the sex offender registry so that the community knows what happened. But when you have individuals who go out and give people their undue 15 minutes of fame on YouTube, the only thing that really does is hurt our efforts. And I think this quote by the Michigan Attorney General is just spot on. Because not only does it hurt these investigations, but it also puts private citizens in danger as well. And the last thing that we want to see is you go out and get hurt because of something that happened. So there are a number of resources, and I know we're getting towards the Q&A here, but I showed you that graph earlier, and that graph is indicative of the work that we and the rest of these 60 ICAC task forces have to do. But if you ever get to a point where you suspect something is going on, your children, your grandchildren, just something that you see on the internet, the best tool that you have at your disposal is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Cyber Tip Line. The National Center runs a separate division from their Missing Children's Unit. It's known as the Exploited Children's Division. And they triage all of the cyber tips that come in from industry and from private citizens. And there are some 20+ million cyber tips that go out every single year, the vast majority of them to the international law enforcement community. But report.cybertip.org is where you go to file a cyber tip. And then ICACtaskforce.org is the national site for all of the 61 ICACs that are throughout the country. Here in Texas, there are 3 ICACs. There's 5 in California, a number in at least 1 in every other state that can help you and help your children or your grandchildren to protect themselves. And then finally, as I said earlier, it's all about education. Right? The work that Chris is doing, the work that the ICAC task forces are doing, to bring some awareness to this problem.